This right here, I think, is a good visual summary of Sprawl. Lots of cool retro style that misses the target in surprising ways. Developed by MAETH and published by Rogue Games, Sprawl is a retro-style first-person shooter all about jogging on walls and filling baddies full of slow-mo lead. Sprawl's gritty sci-fi sensibilities and beat-heavy music has had me eager to play it ever since its reveal a few years back, and finally I was able to get my hands on it, and indeed, I have some thoughts. Is Sprawl the smoggy thrill ride we all hope for, or is it time to take a break from the cyberpunk shooters? In today's video, we're gonna find out. So let's sharpen our swords and hit the walls.
I finally found you, 7. Time to die.
Sprawl is set in the far-flung cyberpunk future, although this is not the fun kind of cyberpunk with neon and dancing hologram girls. No, rather the dirty kind where everything is garbage. You play as 7, a female cybernetic super soldier who has fled her corporate overlords and is now fighting across the Sprawl to earn her freedom. Guiding 7 through the 12 levels of this game, spread across 3 episodes, is a malevolent AI named Father.
I noticed a soldier praying to his god, so I went ahead and answered his call.
Father is also trying to escape his corporate masters and is helping 7 quid pro quo. If 7 helps Father escape, Father will help 7 not only get her freedom, but also forgiveness for her past deeds and revenge on those that forced her to do them.
You've done unspeakable things, all in the names of cowards who seek to advance no one but themselves.
For fans of cyberpunk media, the story isn't anything new, and the common genre tropes are definitely easy to see. And in fact, the narrative feels real similar to 2020's Ghost Runner, which was also about an AI assisting a cyber soldier for their own means. It may not be the most original tale in the world, but it is conveyed effectively and did keep me intrigued. It leans towards the vague side, challenging players to suss out the details of the world and 7 for themselves, done largely by finding hidden QR codes. Whip out your phone, give these a scan, and you'll be brought to a text-filled webpage offering insight into Sprawl's world. It's a neat gag, although I wish they'd just had this in-game. I'm just not a fan of the process of taking out my phone and scanning every time I want to read something. Plus, as far as I can tell, these text entries are nowhere in the game. So are these web pages going to be around forever? Is someone playing this 10 years from now still going to be able to read these? I don't know. Call me old-fashioned, but I like it when all my story is on one device. Sprawl's throwback visuals are the kind I dig the most, as they do a fantastic job of embracing late 90s retro, but intelligently weaves in visual flair only possible with contemporary tech, resulting in rich graphics that are artistically captivating as well as nostalgic. There's the low-poly models and crunchy pixelated textures that bring the old-school charm I love, but it's the vistas that really made my jaw drop. These grungy, sun-bleached scenes of urban decay that are simply stunning, at times coming across somewhat photorealistic. And yeah, the textures that appear to be from photographs certainly lend to that, but I would argue it's more the hazy lighting and blooming light sources that really sell the effect. Sprawl's urban sprawl is rusty and rotting, featuring a color palette of browns, tans, grays, and orange, a selection that tends to feel drab to me in most games. Yet Sprawl manages to keep them feeling varied and, dare I say, vibrant, with the occasional hit of sharp color. Red mostly, to keep things interesting. The whole thing takes clear influence from the best of sci-fi and cyberpunk cinema. However, it was the gaming influences that stuck out to me the most. It's hard not to be reminded of Half-Life 2's City 17 sprinting along the walls of Sprawl, but it was Sony's Killzone that I was reminded of the most. The city shares some characteristics with the streets of Vecta from the first game, and the black-clad soldiers are dead ringers for the Helghast. The lighting is splendid. Dynamic shadows look convincing, stretching across the harsh glow of the sun, and explosions splash beautiful light across enemies for a fleeting second. And the reflections are incredible. I mean, damn, that's pretty. It is on the dark side though, so much so that sometimes the only way to see enemies is by the lights on their armor. Although this never got in the way of gameplay and is more of a nitpick. The music is a perfect fit for this game. An industrial electronic soundtrack overflowing with glitchy beats that really motivate some furious clicking. The main driver of the music is the backing choir, which reminded me a whole lot of the cyberpunk classic Ghost in the Shell, and is likely meant to be a tribute to it. When the high-pitched voices start flowing into the scene, it makes everything feel wonderfully epic and dramatic. Awesome. However, I do wish the soundtrack was more dynamic. The music has a tendency of hitting crazy crescendos when nothing is going on, which comes across a little awkward, and can be annoying with the repetition of some of the beats. Music is always tricky because it has to heighten a moment without being a distraction, and Sprawls does have a tendency to tip into the latter. In terms of gameplay, Sprawl is a fairly straightforward movement shooter, with 7 able to run along walls both for platforming challenges and defense, as well as a good old-fashioned slide. The core mechanic that Sprawl revolves around is a limited slow-mo state called Adrenaline, which I'm going to call bullet time from here on. This gives you an edge by slowing down time and highlighting enemy weak points, as well as overkill points, which when hit, well, overkill an enemy, often explosively. And if the enemy is killed by shooting either weak point or overkill point, they drop valuable health, ammo, and adrenaline pickups. Enemies can also be stunned, which opens them up for a decapitating melee attack. Also rewarding pickups. Okay, so I'll be upfront. I struggled to enjoy Sprawl's gameplay. Mechanically, it's adequate. The game controls just fine, and the wall running is decent. The sense of attaching to the wall could be stronger, and sometimes it's hard to gauge how much momentum you have, but it works. The shooting is good. The arsenal is fun, with some peculiarities in their handling that I'll touch on. At first, I was let down by the shotgun, as its reload is painfully long, until I realized you can weapon swap pretty effectively to get around it. And a pistol-shotgun combo is a fun greeting for the big boys. I do think the arsenal is overpowered. After the shotgun, it's a series of juggernauts, the demolishing grenade launcher being the weakest of them, as the railgun and rockets are essentially one-shotters and the minigun will tear through anything like butter, outright trivializing the tougher enemies sooner than I expected. They do balance out a little with their slower fire rates that can leave you vulnerable and eat up your bullet time. And the minigun slows your movement speed while firing. As it should. Seriously, this thing is deadly. However, you're still able to jump with it while firing, which kinda undermines that and honestly made me feel like I was cheating. Fun guns all around, but maybe less would have been more. Past basic mechanics though, the other systems of this game were underwhelming. The first thing I want to pick on here is the central mechanic, bullet time. Functionally, there's nothing wrong with it. It behaves as you would hope, bringing the sort of spectacle you would expect. My problem with it though is that it feels totally unnecessary. In my opinion, if you're going to revolve your gameplay around a bullet time system, then you need your normal, real-time combat to be the sort of intense that necessitates it. For example, in the granddaddy of gaming bullet time, Max Payne, taking on enemies in real time can be an uphill battle. Bullets come at you with near hit-scan speeds, and the chances of survival taking on multiple enemies in real time isn't great. So bullet time is an invaluable tool that has to be used smartly and rationed effectively. Same with Monolith's Fear. Taking on enemies without the use of bullet time can be an uphill battle for many of the same reasons. Sprawl completely lacks that sort of intensity. For starters, the bullets, projectiles, are slow. So slow in fact that if you keep a consistent circle strafe, nothing can hit you. Nothing. And the enemies don't do anything to counter this. Past boss fights, I can't say I ran into a combat situation where my survival hinged on using bullet time. Sure, it was helpful in some tricky moments, without a doubt, but I was able to get through many fights without ever touching it, and there's really only one enemy in the game that requires bullet time to beat, well, at least until you find stronger weapons. What bullet time is mostly useful for is hitting weak points and overkill points, and even then, that's not the strongest justification. I mean, most weak points are just heads, which is pretty obvious. And overkill points are mostly backpacks, and you can hit these points in real time with relative ease. Often it happens on accident anyways. To be fair, there is some kickback to the weapon fire that can make hitting these weak points in real time tougher. For example, the pistols have quite a bit of kickback that's largely mitigated in bullet time. However, this still doesn't do much to justify it. And regardless of kickback, their range is pretty generous, and there's plenty of moments where you can just eliminate enemies from afar, further undermining the system. To put it bluntly, if you yank this system out of the game, it wouldn't affect much, and that's a problem. There is so much more iteration that could have gone into it. It really feels like they just slapped it on and called it good. Adding to this are the enemies. Now, going back to our Max Payne and Fear examples, the enemies in those games were intelligent and ruthless. Key motivators for bullet time, as this gave the player an edge against them. In Sprawl, baddies are the opposite. They are one note and just plain dumb. Most enemies run up, stand in one spot, and shoot at you in a rhythmic fashion. That's it. They don't try to flank you or defend themselves. They don't even have other attacks. They just stand and shoot, waiting for you to kill them. And other enemies just bum rush you. And if you happen to encounter rushers on a rooftop, it's easy to fool them into blindly running off the edge. It straight up became a strategy I could count on. The enemies are so dumb, in fact, it's not hard to herd them with a circle strafe and just wait for them to shoot each other. And in a few crowded arenas, it wasn't hard to get all the enemies chasing me and herded into a corner where it was just a matter of hitting one of their overkill points. This brings us back to our drone friend from the start of the video. Yeah, you can stand in the middle of their bullets and not be hit, which isn't necessarily bad, but they don't make any attempt to move themselves to hit you. They just float there, mindlessly shooting. When it sunk in how dumb the enemies were and how underdeveloped the bullet time was, it didn't take long for the gameplay to feel dull and boring. Now, to be fair, some of this was helped when I bumped the difficulty up to Nightmare. And heads up, the difficulty is located on the bottom right corner of the main menu, which is odd. Not sure why it's not in the options or prompted when you start a new game. Anyways, on Nightmare, enemies can kill you in just a few hits, and that extra spice does make things more interesting and intense. Although it hardly covers up the problems, and I doubt most players are going to be keen to jump into Nightmare right off the bat. Now, I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments when Sprawl's gameplay clicked. Starting with episode 2, a common enemy are the mechs, which are impervious to most of your weapons. Initially, to best them, you have to use bullet time to shoot their grenades as they launch, and I thought this was awesome, a great use for the system, requiring me to pay attention to tells and time correctly. Good challenge. Unfortunately, this is the one enemy like this. All other types fit into that category of either one-note stationary shooters or rushers. It's a shame more enemies weren't combat puzzles like this. Progressing through the game, it also dawned on me that level design can really dictate how much these issues are felt. Sprawl's level design is largely solid, especially the numerous parkour platforming sections. There are times when they can be confusing to navigate, but nothing that hurt the experience, at least for me. But the combat arenas are more uneven. Many of the issues I pointed out were more pronounced in open arenas where the player has a lot of room to maneuver. However, when I started encountering arenas that were more condensed and had a lot more verticality, things started to click. Enemies could surround me easier, pushing me to use my parkour more for defense, and stationary shooters can easily blindside you from a high position. And the slow projectiles that are child's play in an open space are a lot harder to deal with in a narrow one, pushing for some precise dodging. Throw in some of those tricky mechs and we have ourselves a challenge. Indeed, in these moments the game came together, and FYI, they are more commonplace in episode 2. But alas, these were the minority, and not enough to save the overall experience for me. Sprawl was a disappointment. As much as I dig its visuals and overall style, for me the choices made in gameplay just shot the experience in the foot. It's a hard one for me to recommend, especially since there are far better cyberpunk shooters out there to spend your time on. Now, I don't think this is a broken, terrible mess. No, Sprawl is well made and polished for the most part. Like I said, for the most part. The foundation of this game is good, the mechanics are fine, and the concepts are strong, and really the complaints I listed can be rectified with more time, testing, and tweaking. And look, it's not lost on me the positive reception this game has already received. I know I'm in the minority here, but I really hope the devs embrace feedback and keep pushing further with this one, because I believe there is a far better game that can be uncovered. But that's it for me. What are your thoughts on Sprawl? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you dug the video, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.